Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone. As the old saying goes, truth is often stranger than fiction. While writers work tirelessly to provide the crazy plot twists we've come to crave from our favorite crime books, TV, and movies, even the best imaginations occasionally fall short of reality. Though we've covered a few cases like this in the past, today we thought we'd take a look at even more examples of such crimes, focusing on cases with strange or unexpected twists that kept everyone guessing. Before we get to our list, don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Zone for more true crime content like this. It really helps us to continue building the channel, and if you've watched a bunch of our videos already, you might not even realize that you're not subscribed. While you're there, make sure to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest releases. As always, we are extremely grateful to everyone who has helped support the channel. With that out of the way, here are 4 more true crime stories with insane twists.
On the morning of September 1st, 2015, members of the Illinois Fox Lakes Police Department received a call for backup from Lieutenant Charles Joseph Gliniewicz. The officer radioed in to dispatch to say that he was pursuing 3 people into a marshy area of the village and described the suspects as 2 white men and 1 black man. The call came in just before 8 a.m., and though backup arrived in minutes, it was too late. Gliniewicz's lifeless body was found roughly 50 yards away from his squad car. He had been stripped of his radio, taser, and pepper spray, which were also found scattered nearby. A closer inspection of the body revealed that Gliniewicz had been shot twice. The first bullet had struck his cell phone and bulletproof vest. The second had pierced his upper chest. He also appeared to have sustained several scrapes and bruises. The discovery immediately triggered a manhunt, with police searching homes, cabins, railroad tracks, and even boats. Within 14 hours, the initial 2-square-mile search area was expanded, and at least 100 investigators were on the ground looking for the 3 men Gliniewicz had described. The shooting turned the normally quiet village of Fox Lake upside down, and public outrage over the incident grew rapidly. Gliniewicz had been well known in the community for his work with the Fox Lake Police Explorer Program, a youth mentorship organization for young people interested in law enforcement careers. He was often referred to by the name G.I. Joe due to his tough and all-American demeanor, as well as his perceived resemblance to the popular action figure. To make matters worse, Gliniewicz was the father of 4 boys and had planned to retire from the police force at the end of the month. A vigil for the fallen officer was held on September 2nd at Lakefront Park in Fox Lake, where a large crowd attended. However, it didn't take long for news of the killing to spread. The following day, the Chicago Bears displayed a tribute to Gliniewicz at a preseason game, and thousands attended the officer's funeral on September 7th. His funeral procession was reportedly 18 miles in length. The story also took on rapid political significance, as some pointed to the incident as evidence of the increasing hostility and danger faced by police following the emergence of the Black Lives Matter movement in 2014. To many, Gliniewicz's death was proof that there was a war on cops in America. In the background, the investigation pressed on, with no expense spared to track down the perpetrators. Helicopters with heat-sensing scanners and canine dog units scoured the area where Gliniewicz's body had been found for days. Around 50 suburban Chicago police departments and sheriff's offices assisted on the case, and more than $300,000 worth of overtime and other costs quickly racked up. However, on September 13th, the public got their first glimpse at the shocking truth that was eventually to come. Gliniewicz had not been murdered at all. This was first alleged by former Chicago police officer Joseph Battaglia, who began calling police agencies and media outlets and insisting that Gliniewicz had committed suicide. Unfortunately, Battaglia seemed like a less than credible source, and when he was arrested for threatening the lives of 2 key officials investigating the death, many people simply disregarded his accusations. That all changed 2 months later, when the head of the Lake County Major Crime Task Force, George Filenko, announced that Gliniewicz had indeed committed suicide. According to Filenko, Gliniewicz had been embezzling money from the Police Explorers organization for 7 years. Over the course of his time there, he had stolen tens of thousands of dollars, which he had spent on everything from mortgage payments and gym memberships to travel expenses and adult websites. An extensive review of the 6,500 pages of the officer's text messages and 40,000 personal emails had revealed that in the months leading up to his death, Gliniewicz knew it was only a matter of time before his illegal activities were exposed. In particular, he was concerned about the new Fox Lake Village Administrator, Ann Marin, who had been auditing village departments including the Police Explorer program. In text exchange between Gliniewicz and an unnamed individual, he reportedly discussed ways in which he could get Marin out of office, toying with ideas such as arresting her for drunk driving or murdering her and disposing of her body in a local bog. In the end, he had decided to take his own life, staging the scene to make it look like he had died in the line of duty. Following the revelations, it didn't take long for additional reports to surface questioning other aspects of Gliniewicz's reputation. It turned out that he had been suspended several times from the police force and had numerous complaints against him involving everything from sexual harassment to threatening an emergency dispatcher with a gun. After this, the public narrative abruptly flipped, with many organizations who had donated to Gliniewicz's family demanding their money back, and several tributes and memorials in honor of him being hastily removed. In 2016, attention turned to Gliniewicz's wife, Melody, who was indicted on several counts of dispersing charitable funds without authority for personal benefit and for money laundering. As of June 2020, a trial date was still pending.
On August 31st, 1998, 14-year-old Natasha Ryan was dropped off at the gates of North Rockhampton State High in Queensland, Australia. The teenager said goodbye to her mother, appearing to be in good spirits, giving her no reason to believe that anything was out of the ordinary. However, that night, Natasha failed to return home. Witnesses claimed to have last seen Natasha playing games at a cinema complex before leaving with a strange man in a car. According to some accounts, the sounds of screeching car tires could be heard as the vehicle sped away. Almost immediately, there were suspicions that Natasha had simply run away. She had done so in the past and was known to have a rocky relationship with her mother. The teen had also struggled with drug use and had received counseling in the past for self-harming behavior. However, it quickly became clear that this disappearance was different. During Natasha's previous runaway attempts, she had always been located quickly, sometimes in the company of her older boyfriend, Scott Black. But Black was questioned extensively about Natasha's disappearance and told police he had no idea of her whereabouts. As time went on, police shifted their attention to a more disturbing trend. It turned out that a series of women and girls had gone missing in the Rockhampton area in the months before and after Natasha vanished. This began with the disappearance of 16-year-old Rachel Antonio, who was last seen at Queen's Beach 4 months prior to Natasha's disappearance. Within 6 months of the Natasha Ryan case, 2 more women went missing, also under mysterious circumstances. However, the disappearances really started to attract attention when on April 22, 1999, 9-year-old Kira Steinhardt failed to return home from primary school. Police became convinced that they were dealing with a serial killer. Thankfully, it didn't take long for authorities to zero in on a perpetrator. The investigation led to a man named Leonard Fraser, who had spent much of his adult life in prison for a number of rapes and sexual assaults. Blood tests done on the trunk of Fraser's car revealed DNA from at least 2 people, one of whom was Kira Steinhardt. After 2 weeks of intense questioning, Fraser led police to Steinhardt's body. He was subsequently tried and convicted for her murder. A search of Fraser's apartment revealed that police had been correct in their initial assumption that they were dealing with a serial killer. Investigators found human hair and other items that they believed were trophies that Fraser had taken from his other victims. The findings seemed to confirm the worst fears about the fate of Natasha Ryan. Every possible lead had been exhausted, and the evidence pointing to Fraser was too hard to ignore. Eventually, Fraser would agree to confess to Natasha's murder, as well as 3 others, in exchange for being removed from the prison general population and put into protective custody. He told investigators that he had met Natasha at the Cineplex where she had been last seen and offered to give her a ride, after which he attacked her and killed her in his car. Following the confession, Natasha's friends and family held a memorial service for her in 2001, on what would have been her 17th birthday. However, this would not be the end of the story. On April 11, 2003, while Leonard Fraser was on trial for the 4 killings, the prosecution made a shocking announcement. Fraser was not guilty of the murder of Natasha Ryan. In fact, Natasha was very much alive. On the previous night, police had raided an address in Rockhampton, just 2 kilometers away from where Natasha's mother lived, where they had discovered the 18-year-old hiding in a cupboard. The property was being rented by Natasha's boyfriend, Scott Black. It turned out that Natasha had indeed run away from home in 1998 and had spent almost 5 years in hiding, actively avoiding massive search efforts to locate her. Though it is not exactly known how police discovered Natasha's location, There were some reports indicating that a call had been made to a kids' helpline in the weeks prior, and that an unsigned note had also been given to police with Natasha's phone number on it. It is believed that the call and the note may have been sent by Natasha herself, in an attempt to stop Fraser from being wrongly convicted for her murder. Following the discovery, it quickly became clear that the couple had gone to great lengths to avoid Natasha being detected. She rarely left the house at all during her time in hiding, venturing out only a handful of times under the cover of darkness. The curtains were kept closed during the daytime, and Natasha reportedly made feminine hygiene products out of cut-up bath towels so that Scott would not be seen buying them. Even her laundry wasn't hung up outside to dry so as to avoid suspicion. For nearly half a decade, Natasha's life had consisted of sewing, reading, and surfing the internet. On the rare occasion that anyone came to the house, she would have to hide in a cupboard, sometimes for hours at a time. When asked why she had stayed in hiding all this time, despite numerous emotional pleas from her friends and family, Natasha responded that by the time she wanted to be found, the lie had become too big. The response from the Australian public was understandably one of outrage. The police in particular were angry with Natasha and Scott, and there were talks of hefty fines that might be levied to compensate for the vast amount of resources spent on the search effort for Natasha. Eventually, Natasha was found guilty of causing a false police investigation, but was fined just $1,000 after a court found she did not have the means to pay for the cost of the investigation. Scott Black, meanwhile, was convicted of perjury for lying to police and fined $3,000, largely because he was an adult at the time of the incident. He was also later ordered to pay $16,000 towards the cost of the investigation. Natasha Ryan and Scott Black married in 2008. Fortunately, the drama surrounding Natasha Ryan's reemergence did not derail the rest of the Leonard Fraser trial, and he was subsequently convicted of the 3 other murders he had been charged with. He died of a heart attack in January of 2007.
On the morning of December 3, 1999, a fire broke out in the penthouse apartment of billionaire banker Edmond Safra in Monte Carlo, Monaco. Safra would die of asphyxiation from the fumes, along with one of his nurses, trapped in a locked bunker-like bathroom before help could arrive. An accident was quickly ruled out when it was learned that another nurse on staff that night, a man named Ted Marr, was rushed to hospital after suffering stab wounds. He told police that he had been attacked by 2 masked intruders who had managed to gain access to the apartment. The case immediately generated a slew of theories. As a powerful figure in the finance industry, there was no shortage of rumors that could have happened to Safra, and who might have wanted him dead. The mysterious financier was born in Beirut, Lebanon in 1932, and would build his family's banking business into a fully fledged empire over the course of his life. He began learning the family trade early in life, moving to Milan at the age of 16 and eventually to Brazil, where he opened his first bank at the age of 21. In the following years, he would set up the Trade Development Bank in Geneva, as well as the Republic National Bank of New York, which would become his most famous business. However, Safra's success did not come without its share of scrutiny. Rumors began to swirl that he was linked to countless illegal activities, such as drug, gold, and currency trafficking, money laundering, and organized crime. As early as 1957, the banker was named as a drug trafficker in a U.S. Bureau of Narcotics report, though this accusation was later withdrawn. Throughout his career, there were allegations that Safra was involved in the Iran-Contra affair and that he had worked with the Medellin cartel, and that his banks had laundered the drug profits to Panamanian dictator Manuel Noriega. Though few of these rumors were ever substantiated with hard evidence, it's not hard to understand why the suspicions existed. Safra's banks were built on deposits rather than loans, seemingly making them a prime place for money launderers. According to some reports, the Republic National Bank was known to send armored cars to pick up large sums of cash from secretive customers. The sheer number of these rumors meant that there was already a sizable cloud of suspicion surrounding Safra before his untimely death. The only question now seemed to be which one of his shadowy associates had delivered the fatal blow. To many, the answers seemed to lie with the Russian mafia. Safra's dealings in Russia were well documented, with Republic National Bank shipping around $10 billion US every year to various Russian financial institutions. Many of these banks were suspected of being fronts for the mob. Adding to the speculation was the fact that at the time of Safra's death, Republic National was involved in a lengthy and ongoing sale to HSBC. There were rumors that one of the issues holding up the sale was the presence of numerous frozen Russian accounts at the bank which were being investigated for money laundering. According to reports, the bank itself had alerted authorities to the illicit Russian accounts, and Safra was cooperating with the FBI. This led to speculation that the billionaire could have been murdered by a mafia member looking for revenge. Safra's widely known paranoia about personal security also seemed to lend credibility to the theory that he was targeted by powerful enemies. He was often seen flanked by his massive team of Israeli bodyguards, and it was reported that he considered himself a hunted man and feared for his safety. However, almost immediately, police began to discover details that would poke holes in the seemingly grand conspiracy. Being one of the wealthiest places in the world, Monaco is known not only for its safety, but for its nearly ubiquitous security cameras. It was strange then that investigators could find no signs of intruders on any of the nearby cameras. Furthermore, though Safra's security detail was not present on the night of the fire, his home was well protected. In fact, one of the things that had prevented emergency responders from reaching Safra in time were the reinforced steel doors protecting his penthouse apartment. Within days, the bizarre truth about the billionaire's death emerged. It turned out that the fire had been started by Ted Marr, the second nurse at the scene that night who claimed to have been stabbed by masked intruders. Though Marr initially insisted that the intruders were real and that he had started the fire because he didn't know how to properly trigger the apartment security system, he eventually confessed that he had made the entire thing up. The truth was that Marr had set the fire in a misguided attempt to save Safra and his family in order to make himself look like a hero. However, the blaze had gotten wildly out of control. He had stabbed himself with his own knife to add credibility to his narrative that the home had been under attack by intruders. In 2002, Marr was convicted of the arson deaths of Safra and his co-worker Vivian Torrente and sentenced to 10 years in prison. On the final day of his trial, he reportedly said that he did not mean to kill anyone and that Safra was the best employer he ever had. Despite the seemingly straightforward conclusion to the case, some have refused to believe the official narrative surrounding Safra's death, saying that Marr was either set up or that he was part of a larger conspiracy. However, no credible evidence has ever emerged to back up this theory. At least for now, the bizarre case of Edmond Safra remains closed.
On June 29, 2003, police in Altrincham, England, received a call about a stabbing in an alleyway in an area of the town known as Goose Green. The victim was a 14-year-old boy named John, who appeared to be the target of a robbery gone wrong. The teenager was rushed to Wythenshawe Hospital with life-threatening injuries, consisting of one light wound to the chest and another deeper wound to his abdomen, which had pierced his liver and kidneys. The boy would almost die on the operating table twice, but would eventually pull through. However, the incident would cost him his gallbladder. For days after the attack, he lay in bed on a respirator. According to John's 16-year-old friend Mark, who had been with him at the time, they had been attacked by an unknown madman. He said the perpetrator was in his early 20s, wearing a black hooded jacket and black jeans. An all-points bulletin was immediately issued, and media advised the public to be on the lookout for the suspect. Aside from being an unprovoked attack, the stabbing was all the more alarming due to where it had happened. Altrincham was known as a safe and thriving suburb in the Greater Manchester area, where random violent crimes like this were unheard of. However, as police continued their investigation into the incident, they quickly learned that what Mark had told them did not add up. When they reviewed CCTV footage around Goose Green, it showed the boys going into the dead-end alleyway, but there was no evidence that anyone else had followed them in or left during the time when John was stabbed. The cameras had recorded all of the foot traffic in the area, making it almost impossible for anyone to have entered or exited the alleyway unnoticed. It was clear that Mark's story of a random madman had been entirely fabricated, and he was arrested for attempted murder. When John was well enough to talk, police pressed him for information about what had happened. Bizarrely, he only implicated his friend following intense questioning, after changing his story several times. Even then, he claimed he didn't know why the attack had happened. It would take several months of investigation for detectives to finally understand John's reluctance to talk. The revelations started when Mark began telling fantastical stories about the reason he had attacked his friend. He had been in contact with a high-ranking member of the British Secret Service through an MSN chat room, who had told him to kill John. According to the contact, who went by the name Janet Dobinson, Mark was being recruited by the Secret Service, and he needed to prove that he had what it took by completing various tasks. Besides, the murder of his friend would be a mercy killing, as he was told that John had an inoperable brain tumor and only had a week to live. In addition to acceptance into the elite spy agency, Mark said he was promised hundreds of thousands of dollars, as well as sexual favors from the mysterious female agent. As ridiculous as the story was, it was only the tip of the iceberg. As the police investigation continued over a period of months, not only did they realize that Mark appeared to be telling them the truth, but that he himself was an unwitting participant in a bizarre soap opera-like universe of online deception. It turned out that for several months leading up to the stabbing, Mark had been in contact with an entire cast of characters on MSN, all of whom, including the Secret Service agent, was a creation of John. The 14-year-old had orchestrated his own attempted murder. The full police investigation would eventually produce more than 58,000 lines of text and 133 gigabytes of conversation exchanged between Mark and John's various aliases. These included entire story arcs for certain characters that would pop in and out of Mark's life, each accompanied with fantastical backstories. In fact, John had first introduced himself to Mark through one of these aliases, under the name Rachel West, slotting himself in as the girl's stepbrother. John would later say that he felt that if he had not created Rachel, then Mark would have never wanted to get close to him. There seemed to be no limit to the stories John was able to conjure in order to continue his manipulation. At one point, he convinced Mark that a female alias he had been talking to would be raped and murdered if he didn't perform sex acts in front of his webcam. Not only did John later kill off the female character, whom Mark considered his girlfriend, he also pretended to be the supposed killer behind the crime. John would later say of Mark, quote, "I'm surprised he believed it all." As if the case wasn't bizarre enough already, what followed certainly was. In addition to the charges against Mark, John became the first person in the country to be charged with inciting his own murder. The two would ultimately both be convicted, but would receive relatively light sentences due to the fact that the case was so out of the ordinary. As Judge Madison noted at the trial, quote, "Offenses of this kind in any normal circumstances would result in an extremely lengthy custodial sentence, but these could not be described as any normal circumstances." He later added, "Each of the boys was a victim of the other." Mark was sentenced to a 2-year supervision order after pleading guilty to attempted murder, while John was given a 3-year supervision order and was barred from internet access unless otherwise monitored by an adult. The teens were also ordered not to contact each other again. As both of the boys were underage at the time of the incident, their real names were not released, and they have since been referred to only by the pseudonyms Mark and John. We feel it's a fitting end to a case where no one turned out to be who they initially seemed. That brings us to the end of our list. Do you know of any other cases like this that you'd like to see featured in a future video? Tell us about them in the comment section below. As always, if you enjoyed our video, don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Zone for more true crime content like this, making sure to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest releases. Thank you for watching.